10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Okay, folks, good evening and welcome to Blue Heart 1872 podcast. Tonight, folks, at the last minute, I'm joined by Southampton legend Matt the Tissier. Matt, good evening, sir. Thanks for coming on.
No problem, mate. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, folks, Matt, quite controversial in the media at the minute. Since the pandemic. Whether you believe the pandemic or not, Matt's been outspoken. Words used to describe Matt is nutcase, psychopath, conspiracy theorist. Matt, how do you answer them now that we do know that the pandemic, well, I believe it always was a bit of a farce?
I always felt like it was an overreaction and said so from the start. And I think time is vindicating. And I don't regret taking the stances I did. And the more each day goes by, the more the stuff that I was saying a little while ago seems to be coming true. So I think being called a conspiracy theorist nowadays is actually a name that you should wear with a badge of honour, because they got more things right in the last 2 years than any expert and any government minister.
Yeah, correct. Okay, Matt, we'll come back to that. So we'll start with the football first. Obviously, Matt, Southampton, obviously a big following from Southampton on here tonight. Feelings on the sacking of Ralph and the new manager?
I thought, after 4 years, I think Ralph had been given a fair crack of the whip. I don't think we were a great deal further forward than when he took over. So I don't think he can complain that he didn't have the support of the football club down the years. You know, we suffered a couple of 9-0 defeats and the club stood by him. And I felt that was the right thing to do at the time. There wasn't any knee-jerk reactions, but I think after nearly 4 years, I think it was probably right to make a change.
Okay, Matt. Obviously, the new man coming in. Thoughts on him, Matt? Is it a step down?
Well, I didn't know a huge amount about Nathan. Obviously, I've seen the work that he'd done at Luton and done a terrific job there. So I think if you're doing a cracking job in those divisions, then I think there's every chance that clubs, like Southampton, will look at you. And look at the job that you've done on a pretty tight budget, because obviously we're not the biggest spending club in the Premier League by a long way. So they've gone for a manager who's used to working with a bit of a budget and has a reasonable amount of success with that.
Okay, Matt, would it be fair to say, obviously I'm not a Southampton fan, but looking from the outside, is it a safe bet by them thinking if we do get out of the mess we're in, it's a good move? If we do go down, he's a safe pair of hands because he knows the league well.
I guess there was probably a little bit of that thinking around, but I mean, we're not that far into the season, so we're not even halfway through. So to have picked a manager for Championship football, I think would have been a pretty negative and damning thing to do. So I don't think that was at the forefront of their minds. Okay. I think that they've looked at the job that Nathan has done and hoped that he could do the same with the talented young players that we've got at our club. So I'm hoping that wasn't an appointment for next season.
Okay. Obviously, Matt, your own position down at Southampton, you were like an ambassador. Sadly, you've lost that role. How was that news broken to you?
I made the decision to resign my role as club ambassador, actually. So the news wasn't broken to me at all. I broke the news to Southampton. They were getting a lot of calls from people. Apparently, a lot of Southampton fans were ringing into the club and complaining that I shouldn't be an ambassador, given what my views were like. That I was not going along with the mainstream narrative in the media, and so I decided that I didn't want the football club to come under that kind of pressure. So I decided that I would resign my position and take away the power from the idiots that were ringing into the football club and complaining about me.
Yeah, and obviously, Matt, we spoke there just before we came on air live. Last year, down to Mayflower, you were cancelled the British Legion. Obviously, I had tickets purchased for that, basically probably because yourself was involved, and found out you'd been cancelled. Why did they cancel you down there at the Mayflower British Legion?
I was cancelled because I had the temerity to suggest on social media that during times of war that both sides will engage in propaganda in the media. And apparently that view was not very well taken. And again, the people were complaining to the Royal British Legion that I shouldn't be in this position of narrating the show, which I'd done free of charge for the last couple of years before that, and was prepared to do the same again. Now, I think the Royal British Legion obviously had forgotten why all those people died and what they were fighting for, because one of the things they were fighting for were our freedom of speech. And yet I was cancelled for having an opinion. So that was a very disappointing thing to have happened. They caved into the woke mob, the pressure from the wokesters out there, and I got stood down from the job. But that wasn't really the most disappointing part. My daughter was due to be reading a poem. My 13-year-old daughter was due to be reading a poem that evening as part of the performance, and of course that went as well, and she was devastated.
So she was cancelled basically as well.
Yep.
Okay, so for people like me who have obviously fully supported what you've been saying, I'm cancelled as well then.
They can try and cancel me. They can make as many complaints as they want. What they won't do is shut me up. They won't silence me completely. I will still have an opinion on things, and because I've always believed that we should be able to hear both sides of any story before making up our mind. And there's only one side of the argument that wants to cancel the other side. I'm quite happy to sit and have a debate with somebody. And have a frank exchange of views. However, the other side don't want frank exchange of views. They want you to be cancelled and not have to debate with you. And the only reason that happens is because they can't debate with you because they know they can't win. Okay.
So, Matt, question then from Tanja Reid. Do you think we should get Beats back on the coaching staff, Matt?
I think there's almost seems to be a culture down at Southampton at the moment where they're almost anti anybody who used to play for the football club. When you've got people like Marion Pahars applying for the job of the under-18s coach, and he doesn't even get an interview, given that he'd managed his national team in the past, tells you something about what perhaps the current regime think about ex-players down there.
Okay. Matt, obviously, question Paul directly. Well, what he's saying is soccer Saturday, just not the same. I'm 100% behind Paul. I hate watching the soccer Saturday. Now you're not there. Matt, how did obviously we know why they got ready for you at Sky, but how did that come about, as in how were you told from Sky? I
was told via a Zoom call in August of 2020. It was a call that wasn't. It was just I was told was a call to talk about the upcoming season and to have a bit of a catch up. That's how it was played to me. And then as soon as I logged onto the call, it wasn't just the head of football at Sky that was on the call. It was some guy who I'd never heard of, who was introduced to me very quickly as somebody from the legal department at Sky. At which point, I then knew exactly what was coming.
Yeah. Matt, then, but people outside of that doesn't know would say, well, why is Merce still on there? As in Merce and Jeff Stelling, why did they not get? Well, Jeff was to leave and then he's changed his mind.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff is that show, quite frankly. As much as we were on there for a long time together, I don't think that show was ever the same, even if it was the four of us. I don't think the show was ever the same if Jeff wasn't there. So, firstly, Jeff was too important to that show. Secondly, in Merce's case, I don't know exactly why Merce kept his job and the other three of us went. It did seem a bit odd. If you were to ask me my opinion on it, and which I don't know as fact, so I'll never state as fact, But it seems to me that I think if Merce loses that job at Sky, I think his world falls apart.
Right. Okay.
And I don't think that Sky wanted that on their conscience. Quite frankly. So that's my opinion on it. I don't know that as fact.
Yeah. I always have to say, Matt, we went down and watched you in the Mayflower with the pundits that night, and what a night! And anybody gets a chance to go and watch that's got to go and see it. It's a fantastic night. So brilliant. So Nate, Mark McDonald saying the woke brigade has bullied you out of work. Would you agree that, Matt? You've been bullied out of work?
To be honest, the British Legion wasn't work, as I said, because I wasn't being paid for that. The job at Southampton was minimal in terms of actually money that I got out of it. They were employing me at a very cheap rate. I wasn't a member of staff. I was just paid for any hours that I did, and so it didn't really have too much effect on my financial outgoings, quite frankly. So it's more annoying. I got the worst one really. I was due to speak at a dinner, at the end of season dinner for the Jersey Bulls Football Club, back in May, and ITV decided that they were going to bully the Jersey Bulls into cancelling me as the speaker, and I was getting paid for that one. And so they kicked up a bit of a fuss, told Jersey Bulls that they were going to do a report on their end of season dinner, and that they were going to report on it as being controversial because I was there speaking, even though my after dinner speech is purely about football and my career and my media career, and it had nothing to do with my views in the world at the moment. So, but all the same, ITV pressured and bullied Jersey Bulls into standing me down as the speaker.
Are you disappointed, Matt, that the Jersey club never stood their ground?
I was a little bit disappointed that they didn't show a bit more of a backbone, quite frankly. But they're a club that were run by volunteers, not really used to being put in this position, and I think with hindsight, perhaps they might deal with things differently in future. But I think it was the first time they had to deal with that kind of situation, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
Alan Simpson says, stick to your guns, Matt. They're scared of obviously the truth. No surrender. P.S. Fantastic player, mate. Paul Deverick, Matt, I always go to Saints away, and like my club, West Ham, you lost something as a club leaving the Dell. I wonder if you agree.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't disagree with that statement at all. The Dell was a wonderful place, and it was somewhere that did really give us a little bit of an advantage in terms of the crowd being right on top. The amount of players that I've spoken to since I've retired who all say to me, I hated coming down to your place. The pitch was really tight, and it wasn't an easy place for teams to come and beat us. So, and I think for a few years at St Mary's, that was a little bit the case, and we took a little bit of time to get used to it, and obviously we ended up getting relegated 3 years into our new stadium.
Okay, Matt, obviously mainly a Rangers podcast here, so you can imagine my screen's going crazy with Joe Aribo. And but one of the questions coming up here with a lot of Rangers fans is your thoughts on who's now our director of football, Ross Wilson. Obviously, he's coming in for a lot of stick at the minute. Per transfer windows.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of job is a bit of a thankless task. Quite honestly, I did spend a bit of time with Ross when he was down here. Sat with him at some games, watched some games, spent a bit of time in his company, had lunch with him, and I quite enjoyed the chats that I had with him. But that role as the director of football type role, where you're in charge of the transfers and all that kind of stuff, it's so difficult in football to get every transfer right. Nobody does it. Nobody gets every transfer right. You're gonna have hits. You're gonna have misses. You just have to hope that your hits outweigh your misses. Otherwise, you will come in for some stick, and it's a bit of a thankless task.
Well, what Rangers fans will tell you is we're having more misses than hits, Matt. So,
and that's the problem. And when you get more misses than hits, that's when the flack comes in, and you have to try and turn that thing around.
But outside of that, I mean, Ross Wilson and that there, what do you think of that role in football? Do you think it's worth having, or are you better just with a coach going and getting the players?
It's an interesting one. I think they're in that situation. I think there are times when too many cooks can spoil the broth. So you've got your scouts that will go out. You've got your technical department that will look at footage of the players. And then you've got your director of football. Then you've got your manager, who should, I think, rightfully have an opinion on the players that are coming in that he's going to be able to coach and manage. Sometimes I think you can have too many fingers in the pie and too many opinions. And I think if I was the manager, I think I'd probably want the last say on everything, because at the end of the day, if those signings don't work, it's not normally the director of football that gets the sack, it's the manager.
Yeah, okay. Gary Patton says, Matt, what do you think of the signing of Joe Aribo from Rangers to Southampton? Do you think he can go on the same path as Virgil to a top four club? Southampton fans won't like that being said, but...
Well, I think at the moment it's been a little bit hit and miss, but there's been some terrific stuff that I've seen from him. I mean, he scored one goal in one of our pre-season games, which is an absolute worldie. So there's loads of ability there. I mean, he's not playing every single game, so that's obviously difficult to get a move to a top club if you're not a regular in your team that's fighting at the wrong end of the table. But I think he's got plenty of potential, plenty of ability there, and I hope to see many more goals from him before the end of the season.
Yeah, Paul McGargle says, Matt, have you ever had the chance to play at Ibrox? Never?
Sadly not. No, we had a couple of pre-season tours to Scotland, but if my memory serves me right, I think we played St Mirren. I think we played Hearts. I think maybe Dumbarton, but it was we never played any of the big boys. We weren't a big enough club to attract a pre-season friendly.
No, that's not true. That's not true, Matt. That's not true. Obviously, Matt, we're on the eve now of England starting the World Cup. A lot of questions coming in on your views on the president of FIFA yesterday and his statement about being a migrant worker, about being gay. I know you're laughing. I think the world's laughing today. What's your thoughts, Matt?
I just thought it was really bizarre. It was just a man up there rambling and not really being particularly coherent, quite frankly, and a man who almost felt like he wanted to be the star of the show. When really, if you really wanted a decent head of FIFA, he'd be the bloke sat in the background making sure everything went smoothly, making sure all the details are right, and staying away from publicity. I mean, given what's gone on with his predecessor, you'd have thought that he might have wanted to make his role a little bit more low-key. However, he's chosen not to do that. But at the end of the day, he can do what he wants, because as far as I'm aware, he's just about to be re-elected unopposed. Which is which is a hell of a mandate to have to go and basically do whatever the hell you want. In fact, I think I also saw him today do a little speech before the opening game of the tournament. I mean, who this guy thinks he is I really don't know. But quite frankly, that organisation really needs to be kicked into touch and a new one started, because it's rotten to the core.
Yeah, because he talks about what Europe's been doing this last 3,000 years. I'm still trying to work out what we've been doing wrong this last 3,000 years. He claimed because he had ginger hair and freckles, he was bullied at school. But anyway, Matt, question from Mark McDonald. Who were the best players you played with and against at club level?
At club level, Gaza was probably about the best I played with. Gaza as an Englishman. Certainly, but then you had people like Thierry Henry, who was pretty special. So I think he was amazing. And we did play a pre-season friendly in Italy once, and we got to play against Juventus. So I had one experience of playing against the great Roberto Baggio, and that was pretty special. So I would say it would be between those three. If you asked me to pick one of those three, I'm not sure I could.
Okay, so Tanja Reid saying, hope everyone follows Matt on Qatar. I know I do. Qatar's maybe not as big as Twitter, but his Flipside interviews are brilliant. Matt, tell us a bit about Qatar and your Flipside interviews. I know I've watched all your interviews. Yeah,
so Qatar it's only been not even a year and a half in the making, actually, as a social media platform, but already I think there's over 6.5 million sign-ups. In just a year and a half. So it's actually had more sign-ups in its first year than Twitter ever did. So obviously it's going to take a bit of time to get to the levels that Twitter is at. But it's a much, I think, a much better quality product. The live streams that I do, I interview people every Monday night at 8:00. So tomorrow Monday night I'll be interviewing Dr. Thomas Binder, who is fascinating. He was a guy in Switzerland, doctor in Switzerland, who spoke out very early on about the nonsense that was going on. And the lies that were being told, and he actually got arrested, was psychiatrically evaluated, had to, I think he was force medicated, so yeah, I'm talking to him tomorrow night. The following week, I'm hoping to do Dr. Peter McCulloch, who has been very outspoken. So basically, it's called The Flip Side, and the reason it's called that is because I think over the last 2.5 years, we've only ever heard one side of the argument, and I think the other side of the argument needs to be heard, and so hence the flip side. And I'm interviewing a lot of people who were cancelled on social media, who were portrayed as anti-vaxxers and all that kind of nonsense, but really they were just standing up for actual proper science and proper medicine. But I also veer into sports as well. So I've had Ricky Lambert and Phil Thompson, Trevor Sinclair, Richard Bland, the golfer, on there. So it's a pretty diverse way of doing things, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so anybody that hasn't got Get Our should get on it, because I'm on it and I do listen to Matt's interviews and they're well worth tuning in for. Matt, there's a question here from Alex Kelly. Why was Matt so good at penalties? Wonderful record. He scored some fantastic goals. Matt, why were you so good at penalties? You make it so easy.
I think two things. Firstly, I looked forward to taking penalties. So my whole attitude towards it was really positive. So when a penalty was given, it got me excited. It got me a little bit nervous, but it got me excited. This was a chance to score a goal, which is why we play football. So I think that, coupled with the fact that I was able to side foot the ball quite powerfully, meant that I could keep the accuracy on the penalties, and the penalties had enough pace on them that even if the goalkeeper went the right way, and quite a few of my penalties actually, a goalkeeper would get a hand to it, but because they were travelling so fast, they weren't able to stop him.
Yeah, you made it look easy, Matt. Is that because you had them Big Macs the night before the game? Is that what it was?
I don't think it was. I never looked at it as being easy. What I looked at it was as being a really good chance to score a goal in a football match, and that's why I played it. So yeah, I might have made it look easy, but there were times when I was a little bit fortunate. Maybe I think a couple of my penalties went in off the post, and as I said, the goalkeeper got a hand to quite a few of them.
Yeah, and Alex Kelly asks again: has money ruined the competition within football?
Within club football, I'd probably say it's looking that way. Leicester kind of bucked that trend a few years ago, but it will probably be a long time before we have another Leicester moment, given the way things are going.
Yeah, okay. Question from Marlene. What does Matt think of our Northern Irish Supremo, Stephen Davis? And has he followed his career since he joined Rangers from Saints?
Yeah, I thought Stephen Davis did a fantastic job down here at Southampton. Really liked him as a footballer, really clever footballer. Never panicked on the ball. Was always looking to be quite progressive in his football and looking to get forward and go forward with his passes. I for one was a little bit disappointed when he kind of got left out of the team, when I still thought he had plenty to offer. And it's fantastic to see him accumulate so many caps for Northern Ireland.
Yeah, okay. Kelly Johnson, I'd like to know what Matt thinks about all the injuries and sudden deaths in the sports now.
Well, I've been trying for a long time to raise the alarm with various authorities at FIFA Pro and at the PFA and at the FA. And I managed to get some meetings with those guys eventually. It took a while, and it took a lot of beating it down at doors, and I managed to have Dr. Asim Malhotra with me on the call to voice his concerns at what was happening with the myocarditis and the pericarditis, which were the adverse reacts from vaccines, and the increase in what was happening amongst not just footballers but amongst all athletes in all sports. I think it was worth an investigation, and so I've been actively trying to just sound the alarm with the relevant authorities. and I've actually been told now that footballers are no longer being recommended to take the vaccines.
Footballers no longer being recommended.
That's what I'm told.
Because obviously when I was flying out to Seville for the Europa League final, I was flying from Bournemouth, and I won't name the player on here, but I met an ex-Bournemouth player, and he told me that the doctors were aggressively trying to force players into having the vaccine when he was playing.
Yeah, I think they definitely were at the start. There was a long period of time where I heard that from several current players that it was really and coaches at the clubs that they were really pushing them hard, and you had to be a pretty strong character to resist the temptation to go ahead and have them. But I was quite uplifted by a conversation I had with a current Premier League footballer at a London club, who told me whilst we were playing golf that only 50% of his squad had succumbed to the pressure.
Yeah. Obviously for the World Cup in Qatar, Matt, do you think the pandemic was put to bed for that? Do you think there's many players who've been travelling there that haven't had the vaccine, basically?
There wasn't any. You were allowed to go to the World Cup if you weren't vaccinated, so there wasn't any. I don't think there was any pressure on players to actually get vaccinated and have their World Cup status in jeopardy because of it.
Yeah, but so if the pandemic was so rife, why would you be allowed to travel if you're a footballer and you're a fan? You can't.
I think we all know the answer to that. I think very early on, they knew which demographic of people were at risk of this virus, and we should have done things very differently. The society shouldn't have been shut down. The whole economy shouldn't have been shut down. We're seeing the effects of that now. They'll try and blame it on the Russia-Ukraine war and everything else, but the inflation that you're seeing now is purely down to the amount of money printing that was going on to bribe people into staying off work. They called it the furlough scheme. I like to think of it as the bribery scheme, quite frankly, and that is why we're suffering the consequences with the huge increases at the moment. And I think a lot of people still think that this is just happening because it's Putin. Putin's it's his fault. Yeah. It's all his fault. But a lot of it is Rishi Sunak's fault, and he's the prime minister now. So work that one out.
Yeah, I know Putin's getting the blame for everything. I mean, I'm of the opinion myself. If Putin wanted Ukraine, he'd go and take it. It's one of the superpowers. I think if he really wanted it, he would have it. But then they'll come back to that, Matt. So Paul McGarrigle says, what's Matt's views on the change of footballs from the old heavy balls to the new lighter ones? Would it stop the links to dementia of heading the ball? I certainly hope it will. I think when I look at the technology of footballs from when I first started in the mid '80s to the end of my career in the early 2000s, there was a marked difference in how you would feel after you'd headed a football. So from personal experience, I would like to hope and think that the technology that is around now will be far more beneficial to this generation of footballers, and the amount of dementia that we're seeing in the older players now is something hopefully that will just fade away into the distance. That's not to say that we shouldn't be doing something to help those guys and to maybe just warn against it and still be a little bit wary of it. But I'm hoping that the technology is going to improve things vastly, but we'll only know that in 15, 20, 30 years' time. Okay, so Stephen Werner says, Matt, how did you feel scoring against Man United by lobbing Peter Schmeichel? Obviously, Schmeichel was one of the best keepers about.
He certainly was. He was right up there with the best keepers I ever played against. I think I probably put him only second to Neville Southall, quite frankly. But that goal against Man United was a pretty nice one. It was a bit of a gamble on my part because if you ever watch that goal again, when I picked the ball up about 25 yards out from Manchester United goal, I don't ever look at the goal. I don't ever look at Peter Schmeichel. So I'm concentrating on the ball. I'm weaving in between players. And when I get to the edge of the box, I just remembered that the previous week that Peter Schmeichel likes coming off of his line. And Philip Albert had chipped in for Newcastle the previous week. So when I got to the edge of the box, I just thought, I'm going to take a chance. And I just chipped it, hoping that he was going to be stood 6 yards off of his line like he was the previous week. And sure enough, he was, and I didn't look like an idiot. I looked like I knew what I was doing.
Okay, I better put this one up because I'll be getting hung if I don't. Has Matt seen the team who is top of the Northern Irish Premier League, and can he congratulate everyone from Larne who supported the local team loyally throughout all the tough years? That's obviously Kenny Bruce's team from Purple Bricks. Matt,
it certainly is Kenny Bruce's team, and yes, I know all about Larne, and Kenny has been a great supporter to us at the ex Saints as well. So it's fantastic to see those boys at the top of the Premier League. So I hope they can stay there.
Okay, we'll take one more here about football, and then we'll go on. So this is a guy who watches the podcast all the time. He's called Curry Muncher. Gary, can you ask Matt? He stayed loyal to Southampton throughout his career. Was there ever a time he regretted not moving, or a team he would have loved to have moved to? Can't say Rangers, too easy.
The only team that I probably would have joined, which was the team I came closest to joining, was Spurs. That was my team as a boy. So they were the only ones that really tempted me. But to this day, and with my hand on my heart, I don't have a single regret about spending my whole career at Southampton Football Club.
Yeah. Okay. So Matt, this week you referred to the England manager Gareth Southgate as woke. For anybody that doesn't know, because a lot of people are coming on here, obviously, bit of abuse, but their comments aren't going to be put up. Can you explain what woke is?
Well, I think the whole taking the knee, the virtue signalling stuff, it's all gotten a bit too much for me. I don't think it's made much of a difference. In fact, I think that it has actually perhaps made things a little bit worse in terms of the divisiveness of it all. And so, I just feel like we've got very different opinions on the way that the world is. And I think sometimes I think he just kind of says what he thinks everybody wants to hear. And I disagree with a lot of stuff that he says.
Has Gareth Southgate come back at you with anything?
No, I wouldn't expect him to.
No, not in either the World Cup?
No.
Why would that be?
I wouldn't expect Gareth to come back.
Is it because you're telling the truth?
Well, I don't ever sit and tell people that what I'm saying is the absolute truth. I give my opinions on things, and people can make up their own minds whether they think that's the right opinion or the wrong opinion. And if people think it's the wrong opinion, I'm very easy with that. That's their opinion. They're allowed their opinion. I'm allowed my opinion. That's the world we live in. We should all be allowed to have our opinions, and we should all be allowed to disagree with other people's opinions without fear of being cancelled.
Yeah. So when you look tonight and you watch the World Cup and you see Gary Lineker sitting there, Alan Shearer, probably been paid a hefty wage, talking about human rights. Like Gary Neville, they could have easily stayed back in the UK and refused to go.
I think that would have been a bigger signal of intent. Yeah. Had they just said no, I'm not going to take part in that. I'm not going to go there and be a part of that. I think a lot of people would have had perhaps a lot more respect for them if they had done that. But no, they decided to take the bucks, and that's their prerogative. I don't disagree with them for taking a job if the money's good. That's their prerogative. But let's not be hypocrites.
Yeah,
and I think that's the biggest thing about it all. The BBC have done a segment tonight on the human rights stuff in Qatar. When we should be just talking about football. I hate it when politics and sport get mixed up. I think politics needs to get the hell out of sport, because politics is only in sport because it's not very popular on its own, and it piggybacks on sport to get itself into the public's imagination. That's my opinion on it. And I don't know. I just think that the political side of things really shouldn't come into this. And if it does come into it, let's be consistent with it, because I don't remember the BBC questioning China's human rights when China was hosting the Olympics not so long ago. I don't remember the BBC doing a segment on China's human rights. So if you're going to call out one, let's call out all, and let's not forget our own.
Yeah, well said, Matt. And obviously, Russia banned from the World Cup, and their team's been thrown out of the Champions League and stuff like that. Russia aren't at the World Cup, Matt, but Iran is. Iran aren't squeaky clean when it comes to human rights.
Well, if you're gonna start banning countries that have started wars, why has America never been banned? I mean, how many wars have they started? How many wars have they funded?
Yeah.
So you start banning one country for something. As I said, you've got to be consistent with it all. You can't be banning one country and then letting another country start wars all over the world and start having regime changes around the world and funding those and do nothing about it. And then one country does that, and people listen to me speak there and think, oh, he's a Putin apologist. No, I'm not. I'm saying let's treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
If you're going to call one out, you call them all out.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant, Matt. Obviously, a question here from Stephen Byrne. I know Stevie well. Brilliant footballer and pundit, even big respect for his stand over the COVID period. I'd love to hear Matt's thoughts on the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization on how much control they have over people.
I think they have a lot of control over, certainly the World Economic Forum have a lot of control over a lot of governments in the Western world. I don't think there's any question about that. And Klaus Schwab is quite openly bragging that his young global leaders have penetrated the cabinets of many countries. And I think we've seen that. So they have a lot of control over several people in government, probably including our Prime Minister. And as for the World Health Organization, well, they're funded by, the biggest funder, I think, or second biggest funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So Bill is also part of the World Economic Forum. So it's all a load of corruption all amongst each other. The leader of the World Health Organization isn't even a doctor. He's a pretty corrupt individual if you look into his background.
Yeah.
And so, those people, they love to have control over people. They love to direct the world. They try to get people to come around to their way of thinking, but they do it in a very clever way to make it think that the people are doing good for the world, when actually the world has actually very much been turned upside down the last couple of years, where the truth is lies and lies is truth a lot of the time, especially in our media. And so, they can have a lot of control over people, but the World Health Organization will never have control over me as an individual, and the World Economic Forum will not be having control over me as an individual.
Yeah, good man, Matt. And obviously, that Stephen there has put the question in. I know him very, very well, and I sat and had a pint with him in the Plough in Portsmouth Road about, it must be 4.5, 5 years ago, and he said to me, "There's a pandemic coming. A pandemic's coming that's been set up. It's on its way to make it a cashless society. Obviously, digital. It's all been talked about." And Matt, we go back to the likes of David Icke, who was ridiculed as being some sort of nutcase way back in the 80s. And he has, he's been proved true. So,
well, a lot of the stuff that he was talking about has indeed been proved true, and there must be some very uncomfortable people because he's been saying stuff, and all this stuff that he said is just starting now. More and more people are looking at it and thinking, "Hang on a minute." I mean, the mainstream media, and myself included, like the mainstream media 30 years ago, said he was a bit of a crackpot, a bit of a lunatic. And to be honest, I read that stuff. I had no opinion of David myself, really. It didn't kind of collide with my world at all. However, after the last 2.5 years, I'm kind of decided that if the mainstream media kind of attack you in any way, shape, or form, it normally means it's because you're saying something that's true, and they don't want everyone to hear it. And I've come to understand that with the with the attacks on myself over the last 2.5 years. So yeah, it's the world is an upside down world at the moment, and you've got to try and figure it out, and it's quite a job.
Yeah. Okay. So Marlene says, Elon Musk, friend or foe, Matt?
Friend or foe? Neither, to be honest. I don't have any. I don't put my hopes in any one huge individual. Certainly not someone with as much money as he's got, because normally to get that amount of money, you've got to be playing the game at that level. And so yeah, I take everything Elon Musk does with a pinch of salt. I do the same with Donald Trump. I don't pin my hopes on any one individual. I just live my life the best way that I want to live it, and try to stick to the truth when I'm speaking. Try to stick to what I feel like is the truth, what my gut instinct tells me. And if people disagree, that's fine. If their gut instinct is telling them something else, then so be it.
Yeah, okay. So I was asking what woke was earlier. Curry Muncher says woke equals I want to be offended by everything, and if you do not agree, you're a Nazi, and collect virtual signaling points.
Yeah,
it's a fair point.
It's kind of what it's got to, really. I think woke in the first instance, was caring about social issues, social injustices, and all that kind of stuff, which is all well and good. But I think it started off as a good thing, and I think it has evolved into being something that's actually quite nasty.
Obviously, Matt, when you were at Sky Sports, is it fair to say that the pundits were controlled in what they could do and say? For example, the Black Lives Matter badge.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about for, like, the previous 15 years. But yeah, there was nothing that we were never told what we couldn't say. Obviously, we don't swear live on television.
Yeah.
And we never really ventured into the political side of stuff, really. We just stuck to the football, so it was a pretty easy job. But yeah, I think once the Black Lives Matter stuff started to come in, and I think it really all changed when Comcast bought Sky Sports a few years ago.
Okay.
And that's when the political side of things started coming into the programming, and yeah, I think the Black Lives Matter was the beginning of the end for me, because I refused to wear the badge after the first show that we were told to put it on about 60 seconds before we were going to go on air. After that show, I went to the producer and I said, I'm not wearing this badge. I've done my research on that organisation, and I'm not comfortable wearing that badge with those words on it. I'm quite happy to wear any other badge that's anti-racism, because I know I'm not a racist. But I wasn't happy with that organisation. I didn't align with their values at all.
Yeah, you talked there, Matt, about when somebody bought Sky over. Who are they and who owns them?
Comcast. They're a big American company. I think they own CNN. Those kind of people. And so yeah, I think the whole political stuff kind of changed when they took over.
Right. Okay. So
very left leaning.
All right. Okay. Right. Okay. Back to football. Paul McGarrett says, "What's Matt's views on obviously McCoist as a player and a pundit?"
Well, of course, he was a terrific goal scorer, that's for sure. I don't think there's any question about that. I was a little bit perhaps disappointed that he didn't score more goals when he came down here. But you could not knock his record at Rangers. It was a phenomenal record. And I love him as a pundit. I find him really entertaining, really knowledgeable. And that's kind of the only two things you need from a decent pundit. They got to know their sport, and if they can do that and make it entertaining and quite funny at the same time, then I think you're onto a winner.
Yeah. Okay. Curry Muncher says, back to football. What's Matt's favourite game he has watched as a fan and took part in as a player?
Oh, that's a good question. I think took part in as a player is the easy one, because we back in 1989 we beat Liverpool down at the Dell. We beat them 4-1, and it was towards the end of October, I think it was. Liverpool were unbeaten in the league at that point. They were the best team in the country, and they came down to our place and we smashed them. It could have been 7 or 8 that day, and it wouldn't have flattered us at all. We hit the post, we hit the crossbar a couple of times. it was an amazing performance. One of those days where every player was bang on his game. And trust me, that did not happen very often. So to beat a team of that quality in the way we did was an amazing performance. I was only 20 or 20. I just turned 21, I think. Me, Rodney Wallace, and I think Alan Shearer was playing that day.
Tell me Doddsy was playing.
That was Dodsy's home debut.
Wow.
Doddsy had made his. This is absolutely true, right? Doddsy made his debut for Saints the week before at QPR, and we won that game 4-1.
Right.
Like, we never won 4-1 away from home. And then we went and beat Liverpool in his home debut. We went and beat them 4-1. I mean, he was just a little kid from Bath, and all of a sudden he must have thought 2 games into his career, this is a piece of piss. Yeah, that was my favourite one as a player. As a fan, I'd have to go back to being a kid. See, being a proper football fan before I became a footballer, and obviously changed my allegiance from my boyhood team. As a kid, I went to the 1981 FA Cup final, which wasn't a great game, and it was a 1-1 draw. But the replay, well, that was something else. And Ricky Villa's goal at Wembley in that replay in the 3-2 win was pretty special, and it was a game that ended up 3-2. But it was a brilliant game to watch. Yeah.
Kerry Muncher says, Matt. Oh, sorry, let's put this up. What's Matt's views on? Obviously, it's Graham Lasso.
What's my views on Graham Lasso? I've known Graham a long time. We were probably 10 years of age when we first played football against each other, Guernsey against Jersey. We continue to do that going up through the age groups and both progressed into professional football. He actually came to Southampton for a trial after I was already at Southampton. And he came and didn't make it. The manager didn't think he was good enough. So he went to Chelsea and they did think he was good enough. And he started off there. And then by a strange twist of fate, we ended up making our England debuts in the same football match as well. Graham started the game against Denmark, and I came on as a substitute in that game for my England debut. So he beat me to be the first Channel Islander to play for England by about 67 minutes or something.
Yeah, obviously Delves boy.
He's a good footballer, and a little bit different as a footballer as well, because he was a pretty intelligent, articulate guy.
Yeah. From Delves Boy UK, I'm near sure that could be Adam Delves, because I know he's a Blackburn fan. He says, what about Tim Flowers? Fantastic keeper, Matt?
Yeah, awesome goalkeeper. Yeah, one of the best I played with. And I played with some good goalkeepers at Southampton down the years. I mean, we had to have a good goalkeeper the way we defended down the years. And Tim was certainly one of them. You know, I played with Peter Shilton, played with Bruce Grobler, Dave Besant, Paul Jones. So there was a lot of decent keepers, and I would say Tim was right up there.
Yeah. Obviously, Matt, I want to ask you what it was like to play under Graham Souness.
It was interesting under Suey because he came to us just after he'd had his heart bypass operation. And so he was a lot calmer than we thought he was going to be. His reputation was it kind of came well before him. And quite frankly, we were a bit disappointed. He just wasn't what we were expecting. He was quite calm and measured, and but yeah, no, it was an interesting one. I mean, he did drop me a few times and played Al Berkovic in my place, so that annoyed me a bit. But I got a lot of respect for Graham.
Yeah, obviously every time I love watching Graham on the Sunday on Sky and the live football, but every time he speaks, I just think he's about 2 minutes away from getting cancelled by Sky.
I think he is being cancelled by Sky because I think this is his last season.
Oh, is it?
As far as I'm aware.
Is that knowledge?
I don't know. Might not be.
Oh, an exclusive on Blue Heart. Matt the Tissier confirms. Listen.
It's a rumor I've heard. As I said, I don't claim to be telling the truth, but I've heard that it might be his last season.
Honestly, it's for me, it's expected, because every time he speaks, he's just saying, "Suey, you need to ease off. They're going to cancel you." Okay. Paul McGargle says, Matt, hardest player Matt played with or against, as in tackling?
As in tackling, I would say played with would be Jimmy Case.
Yeah.
They didn't come any tougher than him on a football pitch. Playing against, I would say it'd probably be. I mean, in my early days, I was a right winger, and Stuart Pearce scared the shit out of me for a few years. So he would be right up there. I think Martin Keown would be up there. Roy Keane didn't take any prisoners. So yeah, there was a few that I tended to try and avoid on a football pitch if I could.
I'm going to ask you about obviously the Rangers connection, Duncan Ferguson.
Well, obviously, Big Dunk was playing the opposite end of the pitch to me, so I didn't get.
You still never had no.
I didn't get involved with that at all. No, stayed well away from that. I'll leave that to the centre backs, mate. That's their job.
So Tanya Reid says, best player, Danny or Rodney Wallace?
Well, I kind of took Danny's place when he left Saints for Man United. And Danny did a great job at Saints. Was very popular down at the Dell. But I actually felt like Rodney was a better goal scorer than Dan. You know, they both had electric pace. They both caused problems for people. But I thought that Rodney just had the edge when it came to goal scoring. And obviously he had a decent spell up at Rangers as well. Scored a few goals there.
Yeah.
So I would just say just Rodney for me.
Oh, there we go, Matt. I've been shot down. Mr. Smith, it's not an exclusive. It was in the media recently. There you go.
See, yeah.
I've lost my exclusive. Oh, well.
I thought I'd heard it somewhere.
Okay, Matt, obviously I want to talk, questions, but I'm going to ask you as well. Lack of England caps. Reasons why you never got the caps that everybody knows you deserved.
I think there were probably several reasons. I think my reputation as a lazy player went against me, even though I didn't particularly agree with that. When you have the output in terms of goals and assists that I was having, you don't do that by being lazy. But when the media label you that very early on, it's very difficult to get rid of that tag. So I think that went against me. I think the fact that I stayed at Southampton went against me, and I think perhaps the fact that the two clubs that I turned down in my career were Spurs, and Terry Venables was the manager of Spurs at the time and went on to become England manager, and then Chelsea tried to buy me when Glenn Hoddle was manager, and I turned them down as well. Both times I blanked phone calls from the managers involved because I was happy where I was and I didn't want to speak to them. And so they both went on to become the next England managers. They both gave me caps, strangely enough, but not very many, sadly.
Yeah. But you chat about being lazy, Matt. When I went and watched, I was actually live. I was out in Italy working. I went and watched Juventus and Lazio. And I know we're chatting Pirlo here, but Pirlo was in the middle of the park and he was getting on. He had aged, but he just stood in the middle of the park like yourself and could batter that ball anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of playing football and being effective on a football pitch, and not all of them involve running around like a headless chicken for 90 minutes. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the media who don't understand that. Yeah,
obviously, you feel really let down because Glenn Hoddle was your icon. Am I correct?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I was a Spurs fan as a kid. He was my hero. I wanted to be Glenn Hoddle. I wanted to be able to play like Glenn Hoddle. So he was who I based my game on, and then so I did that, and then I added a few more goals, just to put the cherry on the top.
Yeah, and obviously, Matt, before we go, thoughts on the World Cup? Can England get anywhere near?
I'm not hopeful. Realistically, obviously, I'd love to. I'd love England to win the World Cup, but I think realistically, when I put my heart to one side and just look at it with my head, I think if we got to the semi-finals, I think that would be a good achievement. But I think there are perhaps better teams than us in the competition for sure.
Yeah, and if not, is this Southgate's last hooray?
I think it'll probably be. It depends on obviously which stage we go out at. He might come under a bit of pressure because obviously the form going into the tournament has not been very good. And if we were to say, for instance, if we were to not make it out the group stages, then I think his position would be under a hell of a lot of pressure. If we got to the semi-finals, if he thought that was as far as he can go, then he might decide himself that he's had enough of it. And, it's a very high-pressure job, and he may feel like he's had enough.
Okay. Stephen Werner, final question, Matt. Who was your biggest nemesis in the Premiership and why?
Well, there was one football team that I didn't score against in my career in the Premier League. And I think it was only one. And it was really annoying to me because I had two brothers who both supported this football club. And to this day, they still remind me that I never scored against their team. And I can tell you it wasn't for the lack of trying, because I knew that they would never, ever let me forget it. So yeah, I never scored against Leeds United.
Wow. The only team you never scored against? Not even?
Yeah.
No? So you must have been craving for a penalty and you never got it?
Do you know what? Funny enough, we had one penalty against Leeds in my career, and it was at the Dell, and I remember it well because I was injured. Actually, was I injured or dropped? I might have been dropped, actually. So I think I might have been dropped because I remember watching the game from the stand and seeing that we've got a penalty and thinking, that should be mine. And then watching, I think Alan Shearer stepped up and took it and missed it.
Oh! So you were dropped to the stand, not even in the squad?
No, I was no. See, when the Southampton manager tended to drop me, he didn't really want to drop me to the bench because obviously if I was on the bench, the crowd would be going mad, and putting pressure on him to get me on the pitch. So I tended to when I got dropped, I was really dropped, and I was like, go back to the reserves, and then we'll see you in a little while.
Yeah. Okay, Matt, before you go, just the one, I want you to tell a story because I've heard this story. I'm sure you tell us all the time in your after dinners, and that's about the trip to Northern Ireland. Because I know there's a lot of people from Northern Ireland watching this tonight.
Oh, no, it was Alan Ball. God bless his soul. He was the best manager I played under in my career. He was amazing. And we had one pre-season. I mean, his man management of me was great. And, this kind of story summed up how Bally got the best out of me in those 18 months. So we had one pre-season under him. We went to a little town called Bangor, who I'm sure you know very well.
Yeah.
And although, so the secretary who had booked our trip had obviously never been to Bangor before because the hotel that we were booked into was right next door to the biggest nightclub in Bangor. I don't remember the name of it now. It was a long time ago. But it was right next door to this massive nightclub. So this particular week, we played 3 games. After the second game, Bally gave us the day off. We could do whatever we wanted within reason. So 4 of us decided we were going to play golf. And we're stood in reception, 11 o'clock that morning. Bally comes downstairs. All right, that's what you're doing. So, well, we're going to play golf, gaffer. Taxi be here in about 20 minutes. So he went, there's a little bakery just around the corner. He said, do you fancy a bit of breakfast before you go? So we thought, yeah, that'd be nice. So the 5 of us walked round to the bakery. And as we arrived at the bakery, Bally notices that the pub across the road is just opened. And he looked back at us and he went, never mind breakfast. He said, do you fancy a drink? Right. Well, it'd have been rude to say no. He was the manager after all. So we went for a drink. Now, needless to say, we didn't play golf that day. And at 6:30 that evening, the 5 of us came out the pub. Right? 4 of us walking not too bad because we were finely tuned athletes and we could take our alcohol, and me. And Bally, bless him, who only 5'4", didn't take his drink that well. He's pissed as a fart. Right? So we walk back to our hotel. 4 of us go into the reception. We turn right, go into the restaurant for our evening meal. And I spot out the corner of my eye. Bally comes into reception. He don't go for his dinner. He goes upstairs, gone to bed, pissed. Brilliant. Now, I was the captain of Southampton at this point. And so I've gone into the restaurant where the other lads were. And I've gone, lads, I said, you're not going to believe it. So for the last 7 hours, we've been in the pub with the gaffer. And the best thing is, he's pissed and he's gone to bed. I said, we can go out. So we did. About 10 or 11 of us went out into Bangor, a few silly drinking games as you do, boys on tour and all that. And inevitably, about midnight, we ended up coming back to the biggest nightclub in Bangor, right next to our hotel. Now, the DJ in this nightclub was obviously a massive football fan because he recognised every one of us as we walked into the nightclub. And he was introducing us one by one over the microphone, right? Which was great because it saved having to pull. Now, what we didn't realise at this point in the evening is that Bally's bedroom backed immediately onto the nightclub. And the walls weren't that thick. Bally could hear every word the DJ had been saying. So he knew exactly who was in the nightclub. So when we started rolling in about 2 o'clock in the morning, Bally has stood in reception waiting for us. Right? Yeah. as I said, I was the captain at the time, and I thought it was only fair and my responsibility that I should be the one that came in last. About 2:30 when I came in, I was greeted by one of the funniest sights I think I ever saw in my entire playing career. It was our gaffer at 5'4", giving the biggest bollocking of his life to our goalkeeper at the time, Dave Besant, 6'4". So, he's like that. And he must have spotted me under Bez's armpit or something, right? Because he sent all the other lads off to bed. And he went, he said, I want to word with you upstairs now. Well, I cannot tell you how quickly you sober up in those situations. All sorts of things were going through my mind. Captaincy could get taken off me. I get a 2-week fine. Wife thought I was in bed 4 hours ago, all that stuff. And he took me upstairs to the first floor of this hotel. And I'd always wondered why in hotels, by the lifts, they always put a little sofa. And I'd always wondered what that was for. And I found out that night because he went, sit there. So I sat down on this sofa by the lift on the first floor of this hotel. He come and sit next to me and he just went, look. He said, I've just had to give a massive bollocking to Dave Besant, Jim McGilton, Ian Dowie. He said, they're my senior professionals and they're setting a bad example to the young kids in my team. He said, and you're the captain. He said, but the way you're playing, he said, you can do whatever you want to get yourself to bed.
That's
brilliant bit of man management. I got 30 goals that season, so he wasn't wrong.
Yeah, so there you are. Brilliant from Alan Ball. Okay, Matt, well, that's an hour. You've given us your time, and thanks very much, Matt.
No problem. You're welcome, mate.
Yeah, if you stay on, mate, I'll bring you back. I want to speak. You all right? Okay, Matt, thanks, mate. Okay, folks, hope you enjoyed that. Matt Tissier, obviously Southampton legend, and great to have Matt on. So, folks, hope you enjoyed that. It was a last-minute podcast that we just organised, so catch us next week. Thank you.